My name is Violet Archer, and I turned 40 the night my entire relationship and everything I thought I understood about love collapsed in front of a table full of strangers who thought they were in on a joke. It was supposed to be my birthday dinner. Correction. It was Evan's performance, and I was merely the main prop center stage. The restaurant he chose was loud, dimly lit, and filled with people who dressed like wealth was a personality trait. Every table glimmered with candles and curated dishes that looked more like art installations than food. Evan loved places like this. He said it matched the lifestyle he envisioned for us. I always wondered why us slowly began to feel like me funding him. I didn't know until later just how literal that was. But that night, I knew something was off the moment I walked in and saw her. Amelia, his ex-girlfriend. The woman he swore had no emotional place in his life anymore. She smiled at me from across the table like she had personally stitched the evening together. And in a way, she had. Evan greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, too light, too rehearsed, before guiding me to a seat placed conveniently between him and Amelia. The rest of their friends, a trio of sharp smiles and designer outfits, filled the table with a kind of curated energy that prickled across my skin. The waiter placed a tiny geometric dessert in front of me, one flickering candle, one forced cheer, one room full of eyes waiting for the show. Then came the sound. Tap, tap, tap. Amelia lightly struck her champagne glass with a manicured nail. Her voice rose above the chattering room like a silk ribbon pulled too tight. A toast, she said sweetly, to our birthday girl. Everyone looked at me, but Amelia wasn't done. She stood, tilting her glass just so, catching the light. To Violet, she continued, a woman of impressive stability and even more impressive generosity. Her friends snickered. Evan shifted, but didn't stop her. And to the future, Amelia added, giving Evan a pointed look, the one we've all been working toward. My heart paused. Then she said it. To Violet's upcoming relationship settlement. The table erupted. Laughs, howls, clinking glasses. It wasn't humor. It was triumph. Like they were celebrating a game they believed they had already won. Evan didn't laugh out loud, but his smirk was worse. It was the smirk of a man who thought he was protected, supported, encouraged. A man who believed the future Amelia implied would actually happen. I didn't flinch. I didn't look hurt. I didn't even blink. I just smiled. A slow, calm, deeply genuine smile. Because what they didn't know was that I had already solved the case they thought they were running on me. I rose from my seat, lifting my champagne glass with a measured grace I didn't feel but had mastered years ago, working as a senior investigator in complex insurance fraud. My voice cut cleanly through the laughter. That's hilarious, Amelia, I said lightly. Funny you should bring up settlements. The table quieted. I actually made some legal adjustments yesterday, I continued, taking a sip. I transferred everything I own into an irrevocable trust. My sister is the trustee. So if anyone was planning for a big payout, I shrugged. They're out of luck. Silence. Delicious, heavy, beautiful silence. Evan's face drained of color. Amelia's smile cracked like a cheap porcelain mask. Her friends froze, glasses caught midair. In that moment, the entire room seemed to tilt, the candles flickering like they were laughing with me now. Nobody spoke, because the game had flipped, because the mark they thought they were circling had been documenting them the entire time, because the woman they intended to humiliate had already burned the bridge they thought they were about to cross, and because deep down they all knew. They had underestimated the wrong woman. I sat down slowly, savoring every second of the silence. My investigation hadn't started that night. It had begun 3 months earlier, when I spotted the first lie, the first crack, the first shadow. This dinner was merely the reveal. The silence from that dinner didn't end when I sat back down. It lingered, thick, stunned, suffocating, over every person who had expected me to be the prey in their carefully organized hunt. But to understand how we reached that moment, you need to know how the web was woven, how Amelia, the ex-girlfriend who was supposedly irrelevant, slipped back into Evan's life, and how the small, almost invisible anomalies started stacking into a pattern even I couldn't ignore. Because fraud rarely begins with a bang. It begins with a whisper. It happened 9 months before my birthday. Evan came home with a soft expression, one he used when he wanted to manipulate me into feeling guilty before a request even left his mouth. Hey, babe, he said gently. Amelia reached out. She She's going through a rough patch. She wants closure from our breakup. I had never once asked him to cut her out of his life. He did that on his own, dramatically, loudly, like he wanted credit for it. So when her name resurfaced, I felt something cold and familiar slide into my chest. I asked, "What kind of closure?" He shrugged too casually. "Just a conversation, for emotional healing. I owe her that." He didn't, but I knew better than to argue with a man who had already made his decision. That conversation turned into weekly chats. Chats turned into coffee. Coffee turned into Amelia attending gatherings with his friends again, under the excuse of mutual circles, and it's just easier this way. Easier for whom? Certainly not for me. Every time she entered the room, she carried a presence that felt rehearsed, practiced vulnerability, polished fragility, sympathy wrapped in silk. She wasn't here for closure. She was here for positioning. Evan had never cared about money, not until Amelia returned. He started making comments like, "Maybe we should move to a nicer place. Do you ever think about sharing finances? Couples who grow together invest together. Amelia says men should aim higher. She's right, you know." I remember pausing when he said that last one, fork hovering midair. "Why is Amelia giving you relationship advice?" I asked carefully. He laughed it off. "She's not. She just observes things." I didn't respond, but the investigator in me took notes. Observes, strategizes, influences. That's what Amelia did. And Evan's ambitions were just her voice wearing his mouth. It was a $450 transaction. Recurring, neat, unassuming. A consultation service I had never heard of, one that specialized in relationship optimization for high-value men who want to elevate their lifestyle and secure their long-term future. The language was familiar, the phrasing eerily aligned with Amelia's social media captions. At first, I thought Evan was using it alone. I was wrong. The moment I looked deeper, I discovered that Amelia was the one making the payments. Why would an ex-girlfriend pay for a consultation service meant to elevate my boyfriend's lifestyle unless she expected a return on investment? I didn't jump to conclusions. Investigators don't jump. They trace patterns. So I traced. Evan's texting habits changed overnight. He began placing his phone face down. He added a passcode when he never had one before. He turned off notifications, claiming he needed digital detox. But digital detox doesn't explain the constant buzzing while he showered, the deleted threads, the times he said he was with friends, but GPS placed him elsewhere, the way he flinched when I walked behind him. One night, after he fell asleep on the couch, his phone lit up. "Amelia, did you tell her yet?" My stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" I didn't know the full plan then, but it was enough to confirm that something was rotting beneath the surface. So I did something I hadn't done in my personal life before. I opened a case file on my own relationship. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. Using a mirrored device I legally accessed, every investigator knows how to preserve evidence, I saw a notification from a chat labeled LFT Lifestyle Future Team. Inside was a conversation between Evan, Amelia, and 3 of her closest friends, women I recognized from parties, women who had looked at me like they were measuring something. I scrolled. Their messages were not about closure. They were about strategy. Amelia, "She thinks he's committed. Perfect. Violet's stability will fund his next chapter." Becca, "Upgrade season, babe. You got this." Talia, "Once he moves in fully, half the stuff becomes shared anyway. Then he leaves after a solid year. Clean exit, good payout." And then Evan, "She trusts me. Getting her to open a joint account shouldn't take long." My blood ran cold. They weren't planning a divorce. They were planning a breakup structured like one. A relationship settlement, a payout, a lifestyle exit strategy. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. Professionals don't warn the subject they're being investigated. They gather evidence, quietly, patiently. I saw a final message. Amelia, "We'll give her one last push at her birthday dinner. Make her feel small. People like her hold on tighter after humiliation." Hold on tighter? No, they didn't know me at all. And that was their fatal error. Because after that message, my investigation shifted from observation to containment, from hurt to strategy, from reaction to preparation. They wanted a financial future funded by me. Instead, I built a legal fortress that none of them could break into. But that part of the story, the trust, the restructuring, the lock snapping shut, comes next. Because the night they planned to humiliate me was the night I revealed what I had already done. What they didn't understand was simple. You don't corner an investigator. You just teach her where to aim. If everything before had been red flags fluttering in the breeze, the group chat was the wildfire that consumed any lingering doubt. I wasn't dealing with emotional immaturity. I wasn't dealing with a confused man or a clingy ex. I was dealing with a premeditated extraction plan. And they were executing it with the smug confidence of people who believed they were smarter than the woman they were stealing from. Unfortunately for them, I investigate criminals for a living. They had picked the wrong target. When I opened the binder labeled Archer Personal Investigation, it wasn't symbolic. It was habit. In my work as a senior investigator specializing in high-value, complex fraud, I don't react emotionally to deceit. Not at first, not when the stakes are high, not when the betrayal is personal. I analyze, I map timelines, I trace transactions, I follow digital footprints until the entire picture reveals itself. This wasn't the first large-scale fraud attempt I had dismantled, but it was the first one directed at my heart. Maybe that's why it became the most meticulous investigation of my career. Device logs. I mirrored Evan's phone to a secure device. Every text, every screenshot, every deleted message resurrected itself on my screen. His tone shifted depending on his audience. With me, I just want a future with you. With Amelia, she's warming up to the joint account idea. With his friends, it'll be worth it. She's got money tied up everywhere. 2. Financial patterns. The consultation service Amelia had purchased wasn't subtle. It marketed strategies like maximizing returns in non-marital breakups, claiming lifestyle compensation from high-earning partners, emotional leverage techniques for high-value exits. It was a breakup fraud playbook disguised as empowerment. 3. GPS tracking. Evan had been working late at least twice a week. Funny, his phone always placed him near Amelia's condo or near meeting locations tied to the coaching group. 4. Shared expenses. He had slowly migrated purchases into my accounts. Groceries, clothing, emergency electronics, travel planning apps, hotel deposits he later canceled, but kept the partial refunds on his personal card. Each purchase was small, subtle, strategic. A familiar pattern, building evidence of financial mingling to suggest entitlement later. 5. Recorded conversations. Not secretly, not illegally. He simply forgot that our smart home system logged voice commands and conversations when certain wake words were triggered. I scrolled through hours of recordings. Evan, she's almost there. Once she agrees to the investment property, we're golden. Amelia, good. Don't rush. Make her feel safe. Evan, she trusts me. She'll sign anything if she thinks it's a step forward. I paused that audio more times than I care to admit, not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. That night, I looked at the binder. The maps of connections, the flows of money, the timestamps, the transcripts, and my heartbreak turned into something colder. Clarity. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about Evan. It was about the arrogance of people who believed they could manipulate a woman like me and walk away with the rewards. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my stability for naivety, my silence for ignorance. They forgot what I do to people who lie for financial gain. I don't break down. I break cases. And this was now officially a case. My sister, Meredith Archer, is a partner at a top-tier asset protection law firm. Brilliant, direct, the kind of woman who can read a legal clause and identify its weakness in 10 seconds flat. When I showed up at her office unannounced, binder in hand, she didn't blink. Is this professional or personal? She asked. Both, I said. She nodded. Then we're going nuclear. And nuclear we went. Transferring everything to my sister wasn't a panicked reaction. It was a calculated, surgically precise maneuver. Step 1, the trust. We created an irrevocable family trust, airtight and untouchable. All of my premarital assets, investments, and liquid funds were transferred into it, legally shielded from any claim Evan could imagine. Meredith became the trustee. I relinquished control intentionally. Courts can't challenge assets I no longer control. Step 2, property reassignment. The home Evan had been slowly trying to merge into our shared life, it was purchased by my business entity the same day, a holding company, fully owned by the trust. On paper, Evan and I no longer co-owned anything. Step 3, cutting financial threads. The few shared expenses we had, closed, reassigned, dissolved. The only account left in both names had a few $1,000s. Against the backdrop of the trust, it was dust. Step 4, preemptive legal positioning. All evidence was time-stamped, notarized, secured. If Evan tried any claim, false or otherwise, it would unravel before it began. Meredith leaned back when the final papers were signed. "You just built a fortress," she said. "No one gets anything unless you allow it." I nodded. "I don't plan to allow anything." 2 days before my birthday dinner, Amelia sent a message to the group chat. "Amelia, tomorrow is the night. She'll be humiliated just enough to cling harder. Softened prey makes for clean exits." Softened prey. That was the moment I closed the binder, breathed out slowly, and said aloud, "No, this ends on my terms." They planned their celebration around my downfall, but I would deliver the twist they never saw coming. The dinner wasn't the beginning. It was the conclusion of a case file I had already closed. And Evan, Amelia, their friends? They were about to learn what happens when you try to defraud the wrong woman. The night of my birthday dinner ended in silence, thick, humiliating silence. But not for me. For them. For Amelia, whose smirk died mid-breath. For Evan, whose confidence drained like someone had pulled the plug beneath his ribs. For the circle of friends who suddenly realized the script had flipped and they were no longer the ones holding the pen. But the real spectacle didn't happen at the restaurant. It happened the moment Evan and I walked through the front door of my house. The house he thought would become ours. The house he and his ex planned to leverage in their relationship settlement. When the door closed behind us, he exploded. "What the hell was that?" Evan shouted, voice cracking with a panic he could no longer hide. I calmly slipped off my heels. "You'll have to be more specific." "You embarrassed me," he snapped. "You embarrassed Amelia." I raised an eyebrow. Strange order of priorities. He opened his mouth, stopped, then pointed aggressively toward the door. "You made it sound like I was trying to take your money, like I'm some kind of thief." A beat of silence. Then I walked past him without a word, went to the bookshelf, and pulled out the thick leather-bound binder I'd prepared. With a quiet thud, I dropped it onto the coffee table. "What's that?" he demanded. "Your reflection," I said softly. He froze. I opened the binder to the first page. A printout of the recurring consultation charges paid by Amelia, benefiting him. Then the next. A flowchart tracing their coordinated spending patterns. Then the next. Screenshots from the LFT Lifestyle Future Team group chat. Evan's eyes scanned the pages, widening with every line. His messages about getting me to upgrade his lifestyle. Amelia's instructions on how to secure long-term compensation. Talia and Becca cheering him on like parasites training a host. When he reached the recording transcripts, his face turned sheet white. Evan. "She'll sign anything. I'll tell her it's for our future." Amelia. "Exactly. Make her feel safe, then pivot." He swallowed hard. "Where did you get these?" I looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm an investigator, Evan. This is what I do." His bravado drained out of him like blood from a wound. He cycled through every predictable emotional beat of a guilty man. 1. Denial. "These are out of context. Amelia twisted things. That's not what I meant." 2. Anger. "You had no right to invade my privacy." I tapped the binder. "You forfeited privacy the moment you conspired for financial gain." 3. Blame. "Amelia pressured me. I didn't want to do it. She manipulated me." 4. Victimhood. "I'm the one who's hurt here. You blindsided me." 5. Begging. "Violet, baby, please, you know I love you. I was confused." His voice broke, not from heartbreak, from fear, because he finally understood the scale of what he'd lost. Not me, not our relationship. Access. Access to my home, my lifestyle, my assets, my future. Without me, he had nothing elevated, nothing improved, nothing upgraded. He sank onto the couch, hands in his hair, looking like a man whose entire world had collapsed because, in truth, it had. Just not the way he planned. The next morning, he was gone. He left before sunrise, leaving a note that said, "I need time to process." I didn't respond. By noon, his lawyer had contacted my sister Meredith. It was almost amusing. His lawyer was clearly expecting an emotional battle with a vulnerable woman. Instead, he ran straight into a marble wall, wearing heels and holding a case file. Meredith laid out the facts. All my assets were in an irrevocable trust. Evan had zero claim to anything I owned. The house had been legally restructured into a holding company. Evidence proved he intended to pursue financial gain through deception. Any legal challenge would trigger countersuits for fraud, misappropriation, and damages. The lawyer tried to push back until Meredith calmly added, "If your client proceeds, we will subpoena the entire group chat and make it public record." Silence, then a defeated, "I'll speak with him." By the end of the day, Evan agreed to a formal separation with no financial claims, repayment of his unauthorized spending, immediate removal from my property, no inclusion of shared assets going forward. He walked away with nothing but his personal belongings. He had expected a payout. Instead, he received a bill. While Evan flailed in legal quicksand, Amelia and her circle began spiraling. I wasn't even targeting them yet. This was just the echo of Evan's panic contaminating their hive. Amelia, why didn't you follow the plan? Evan, she knew everything. What followed was a storm of accusations, backstabbing, scrambling, fear. A group of people who once laughed like hyenas now hissed like cornered snakes. And none of them realized the consequences hadn't even truly begun. Not yet, because the next phase, the surgical precision of my response, wasn't about emotional satisfaction. It was about accountability. Systemic, irrevocable accountability. And I was only warming up. Revenge isn't loud. Not real revenge. Not the kind that lasts. The kind that lasts is silent, strategic, meticulous. A whisper that turns into a quake, felt long after the whisperer has walked away. Evan and Amelia's circle believed they were architects of a brilliant scheme. But architects forget something crucial. Structures only stand if the foundation is sound. And their foundation was built on arrogance, entitlement, and amateur fraud. So I did what any professional would do. I corrected the structural integrity by removing them one beam at a time. Their group chat, LFT, Lifestyle Future Team, wasn't just evidence. It was a map of influence, a map of enablers, a map of accomplices who believed they were untouchable. The ringleader? Amelia. Her lieutenants? Becca, Talia, and a man named Marcus, Evan's friend, not romantically involved, but financially and emotionally invested in the scam. Each of them had played a role in grooming Evan toward exploiting me. They had to be addressed. And unlike them, I didn't recruit friends for my plan. I used information, the sharpest weapon a woman like me possesses. Amelia ran her strategic consulting business like she was a self-made mastermind teaching men how to elevate their lifestyle through relationships. Except she was giving quasi-legal advice, financial advice, contractual strategies, all without a license. And she processed payments under vague service descriptions that skirted tax honesty. Her operation lived in a gray zone, close enough to legality to appear polished, but far enough to crumble under scrutiny. So I scrutinized. I compiled screenshots of her clients discussing fraudulent tactics, promotional materials implying legal expertise she did not have, testimonies from forums where former clients complained, her income inconsistencies and mismatched filings, proof she coached Evan in asset manipulation. Then I sent it all anonymously to the State Attorney General, the State Board overseeing financial advisement, the Tax Authority, the Consumer Protection Bureau, not dramatic, just documentation, the kind she built her schemes on. Within weeks, Amelia's business was flagged for investigation, frozen pending review, publicly scrutinized, stripped of clients, hemorrhaging income. Her empire didn't explode. It imploded. Quietly, perfectly, inevitably. Becca worked at a large family-friendly corporation, a company obsessed with image. And her image, once you looked beyond filters, was incompatible with the company's values. Her public posts showcased hard partying, drug references, mocking boring women with real jobs, jokes about manipulating partners financially, even a video where she toasts, "Secure the bag, ladies." All publicly accessible, all proudly posted, all contradictory to her employer's morality clause. I compiled her greatest hits into a tidy document. Then I wrote her HR department an anonymous message. As a longtime customer and shareholder, I am concerned about what this employee publicly represents. That was it. No accusations, no demands, just concern. A week later, she was terminated. Her next posts were rants about betrayal and people being jealous of her glow. But behind the scenes, recruiters can smell controversy like smoke. She wasn't just fired. She was radioactive. Talia was married to a partner at a rival insurance firm, a man I had encountered professionally, polite, competent, respectable. He had no idea that his wife spent her free time coaching relationship fraud. He had no idea she egged Evan on. Talia, men like you don't settle. Violet is lucky to have you. Make sure she proves it financially. He also had no idea she spent joint funds on girls' trips under mental health retreats, which were nothing more than strategy sessions. I didn't send him the group chat. I didn't have to. I simply asked him to coffee under the guise of industry networking. Then I told him, during my personal separation, I uncovered troubling evidence involving your wife advising others on financially exploitative behavior. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I gave him the name of a forensic accountant. The rest unfolded on its own. Weeks later, I saw him at a convention. He wasn't wearing his wedding ring. He didn't say anything, but the small, sad nod he gave me said enough. Marcus was the friend who pushed Evan the hardest. The one who sent him articles like, Men Who Marry Up, How to Secure Long-Term Gains. Dating strategically, maximizing the resource gap. Lifestyle compensation in non-marital breakups. He worked in a sensitive industry, mortgage lending, an industry where trust and ethics are everything. So I did what Marcus never expected. I anonymously submitted evidence of his participation in encouraging fraudulent behavior toward a high-earning partner. It didn't get him fired. It got him audited. Thoroughly, professionally, painfully. By the end of that month, he had lost key clients, been demoted, become a cautionary tale inside his firm. No lawsuit, no explosion, just accountability. The quiet kind. Within 6 weeks, Amelia's business was under state investigation. Becca was unemployed. Talia's marriage was crumbling. Marcus's career was bleeding. And Evan was caught in the ruins of all of it. Their group chat went silent, permanently. The inner circle that once laughed at my expense now drowned in the consequences of their own pride. They thought they were players in a brilliant strategy. They were pawns in a case file. Mine, not out of cruelty, but out of principle. You attempt to defraud someone, you face the consequences. And I wasn't even done yet, because someone still hadn't learned their lesson. Evan. And that, inevitably, led to the final call. 3 months passed after the birthday dinner. 3 months of quiet. 3 months of calm. 3 months of rebuilding a life that had been invaded, manipulated, dissected by people who mistook my silence for softness. My house had been sold, cleanly, legally, without drama. The funds transferred directly into the trust. I moved into a smaller, minimalist apartment overlooking a quiet street. A place with no shadows of Evan's voice, Amelia's smirk, or their whispered schemes. The first night I slept there, the silence felt different. Not empty, not lonely. Peaceful. But peace never lasts uninterrupted. Not when unfinished business still wanders the world with your name on its tongue. And so, one late Saturday evening, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Blocked, of course. I answered anyway, and heard the sound of a broken man. Violet? A shaky breath. Violet, please don't hang up. Evan. I didn't speak. Silence was my boundary. He filled it immediately. My life is falling apart, he whispered. Amelia's gone. She left after everything collapsed. I didn't know she'd run when things got hard. Funny. That was exactly what Amelia had coached him to do to me. He continued, desperate. I lost the apartment. I'm staying in the spare room at my parents'. I can't get approved for anything right now. My financials are a mess. Nobody at work trusts me anymore. They can tell something's off. Translation. His influence, credibility, and charm no longer worked as currency. Then, I know I hurt you. I know I messed up, but I still love you. I never stopped loving you. He was crying. Not elegantly, not dramatically. Ugly, panicking sobs. Violet, I'm begging you, please, just help me. Please, I don't have anyone else. A pause. Then, I didn't think you'd actually protect yourself like that. I thought you'd forgive me. I thought you'd understand. Understand? He expected me to understand the betrayal he planned. He expected compassion for consequences he earned. He expected the woman he targeted to save him now that he was drowning. And so finally I spoke. I'm an investigator, Evan. My tone wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was factual. My job is to assess risk, and you, I exhaled slowly, you are the riskiest investment I have ever encountered. He inhaled sharply. I continued. You filed a fraudulent claim against my life, against my stability, against my trust. His breath caught, trembling. And I did what I always do with fraudulent claims. I investigated, I documented, and then I paused, letting the truth settle in. I denied the claim, with extreme prejudice. Violet, please. You and your team thought you were players, I said softly. But you were amateurs, and amateurs forget one thing. He swallowed audibly. What do they forget? That the books always balance in the end. Silence. And I added, am the one who balances them. Then, with no anger, no guilt, no hesitation, I ended the call, blocked the number, set the phone down. Afterward, I made a cup of tea. Simple, normal, calm. I walked to my balcony, the night breeze brushing against my skin like a clean slate. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched, didn't feel measured, didn't feel managed, handled, or influenced. I felt like myself, My life no longer belonged to people who thought they could carve pieces out of it for personal gain. And the peace that followed wasn't triumphant. It was deserved, earned, balanced. People like Evan, like Amelia, like their circle, they believe the world rewards audacity over integrity. But the truth is simpler. The world rewards clarity, consistency, consequence. They committed a fraud attempt, not in the legal sense, but in the emotional, strategic sense. They gambled everything on the assumption that I would remain naive. Instead, I reminded them what happens when you target a woman who understands patterns, who lives and breathes evidence, who refuses to be anyone's stepping stone. My favorite part? I didn't destroy them. I just stopped supporting the version of themselves they built on my back. The collapse was their own. And as for me, my life is quieter now, more intentional, more mine. No elaborate dinners, no curated performances, no ex-girlfriends lingering like shadows, no schemes whispering beneath the surface. Just Violet Archer, the woman who learned that the most valuable thing she owns is the certainty that she will never let anyone rewrite her narrative again. Not ever.